It's okay. I'll be careful with it. Thank you. Oh, that's very nice. That'll work. You okay?
Neck exercise for him.
Neck asana.
Let me find my notes real quick. I did a song. I'm missing. Sorry, missing. Sorry. Days. One of those weeks, actually. Yeah, you grab that? Thank you. The new Madhuri mug. Your gift. Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devyamatriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindebhyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharma Sarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankarachara Majamam Ashmarachara Prayantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Reva Param Brahman Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Ganesha Sharada Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Hari Jai Ma. So last week we didn't have class, so we're picking up. And 2 weeks ago, what did we do? We were on Kālī Sahasranāma, and we're on verse 29, and we mentioned very nice names that I was connecting that are given in Lita Sahasranāma. A lot of these names are there, and in the Chandi, in the Yadevi Sarvabhuteshu, a lot of these names. And so I'm just going to mention them, try not to re-give a class on it, because I always want to go back and say everything all over again. Nītiḥ, sunītiḥ, surucis-tuṣṭiḥ. Nītiḥ meant discipline and control and culture and like that. Sunītiḥ means good control, good behavior, like this. And then surucis, good taste. And we compared sunītiḥ and surucis, the path of the pleasant, the path of the good and the pleasant, right? Like that. But also surucis is we also want Ma's good taste. Tuṣṭiḥ means contentment or nourishment. Dhṛtiḥ means Dhṛtiḥ means are you there? No, tuṣṭiḥ means contentment, nourishment, and also it comes from the same thing. No, you're right. Tuṣṭiḥ means contentment, and puṣṭir means nourishment, and dhṛtiḥ means fortitude, kṣamā, forgiveness, right? And then we switched into vāṇī. Vāṇī, we said we'll go back to that. We'll include vāṇī into the next group of names. Vāṇī means words. She who is words, and she's the next group of names are Saraswati names. So it will work for her. And then Buddhi, intelligence, and like that. And then we went to Mahalakshmi, and Lakshmi. Mostly we spoke about Lakshmi and Mahalakshmi, these two, telling stories about Lakshmi. So many stories. Now I have to find where I left off on the page. I think we mentioned the Ashtalakshmis last. Did we mention how Lakshmi came out of the ocean? I don't think we did. Did we mention that last week? We did. Okay. Never mind. I don't tell the whole story again, but it's. She came out and was given to the god. She married Vishnu. Okay, good. Okay. Okay, good. So we'll just. She comes in. Yes. Okay. So. Okay. Lakshmi and Lakshmi. Yeah. Actually, you found today a bhajan.
Oh yeah.
That says for Lakshmi to go away. An Lakshmi bhajan. Right? Inauspicious is to go away. Right? Yeah. There's a Chant Central, that's the name of the group. If you look on YouTube, Chant Central, it's wild. You have bhajans and there was animations and for every like Bhaidavas and Dhumavati and they're great. It's wonderful. So that's the latest one is Lakshmi. So now we are at the end of this verse, we're on name 224, for those keeping track at home, is Nīla-Sarasvatī, right, the last name. So Nīla-Sarasvatī, and then the first verse of the next one is Saraswati. I'm sorry, make sure I got this right. Nīla-Sarasvatī. Yeah, and then the Srota-svatī and Saraswati, Matangi, vijayā, jayā. These are the next group of names. So these are all related. A lot of these names are related to Saraswati. So first Nīla-Sarasvatī. So we'll talk Saraswati and then go back to Nīla-Sarasvatī. But Nīla-Sarasvatī means, what do we know what Nīla means? Blue. So blue Saraswati. And so there is, especially in a lot of Buddhist traditions, they worship Nīla-Sarasvatī. And Nīla-Sarasvatī is seen generally as a form of tārā. Right, and so just like Saraswati, we usually see, as we will discuss Saraswati's qualities, Saraswati is very benign, right? She's a refined, benign. They call Saumya, Shanta. She's an auspicious deity, right? But Nīla-Sarasvatī is Ugra. She's an angry, fierce form. So you could think of a fierce form of Saraswati is Nīla-Sarasvatī. Another name for Nīla-Sarasvatī, she becomes tārā worshipped as tārā, and also tārā is one of the Dashmahavijjas, right? But then she's also becomes connected to Matangi, right? Another Dashmahavijja, right? So sometimes Matangi is worshipped as Nīla-Sarasvatī, and sometimes rather like Nīla means blue, but just like kṣamā means blue too. Kṣamā means it's like this dark blue color, right? But now kṣamā means black. So Nīla-Sarasvatī also could be like black Saraswati, right? Nīla, because Nīla is the name of a jewel. What's the jewel? That's that blue jewel. Blue sapphire is the blue sapphire is Nīla, right? And you can see since sapphire there's blue sapphire, but there's also an array of colors in sapphires, right? So sometimes in the Mātaṁgī she's usually worshipped as green, right? But blue Saraswati, green Saraswati, black Saraswati. So this Nīla-Sarasvatī name comes in like that. Saraswati in her fierce form. There is a hymn called, that's what I had you pick up, called Nīla-Sarasvatī Stotram, right? From and you can show you like this is a name. This is a hymn for Goddess Saraswati, but it starts. Gora Rupe Maharave. Gora Rupe. These are actually Gora Rupe Maharave these are two names we found in the beginning of the Kālī Sahasranāma also. Right? Gora Rupa means whose form is Gora, horrible, like fierce, overwhelming, right? And then what is Maharave, whose tremendous sound. Right? So when Ma roars, that's Maharave. Right? So here's Saraswati. You think of Saraswati playing on a veena, chanting ragas in perfect intonation, right? Or reciting the Gayatri, or reciting the Veda, something very, very, everything at its most classical. Here she's of tremendous form, tremendous sound. Sarva Shatru Bhayangari, and who causes fear amongst her the enemies. So she's like a warrior goddess, right? Right. Bhakte Bhyo Varada Devi, but she gives blessings to the devotees. We talk about Kālī this way. So even though Nīla-Sarasvatī, so this is a form of tārā, which is a form of Kālī. You can see that it's definitely some of these other a lot of the other names they're associated with Lakshmi, but we see Kālī as the Mahadevi. She's all these forms, all these qualities. But this Nīla-Sarasvatī is directly a rupa of Kālī. The names become almost. Anyway, maybe we'll go back to that hymn, because I don't want to give a class on I do want to give a class on the hymn, but it'd be very nice. We can go back here, because it's going to close out. This hymn may be able to close a lot of these, pull these things together. So we'll go back to Nīla-Sarasvatī as we talk about Mātangī. Then the next two names in verse 30, name 225 and 226, Srota-svatī and Saraswati, right? These two names, they have almost the same meaning. Actually, it's interesting, they don't have the same meaning. Saraswati, okay, we have to think, Saraswati we know, and Srota, S-R-O-T-A, Srota, right? Here, Srota means sounds, right? So Swati, you could say she's the one who possesses this, Vati means to possess, so one who possesses all sound, right? So that's what we usually think of Saraswati, right? As a goddess of music, goddess of mantra, goddess of sound, the goddess of the alphabet, the goddess of articulated speech, the goddess of thinking and words and scripture and articulation. What's that? Okay. But what about Saraswati? So Srota-svatī means Saraswati. That what we usually think of Saraswati, right? And it refers back to the Vedic goddess, Vach or Vak, the goddess of speech. That becomes a lot of the qualities of this Vedic goddess become in popular Hinduism, modern day Hindu, means medieval Hinduism and modern Hinduism become Saraswati. But what does Saraswati mean? If Srota-svatī means the goddess of, or the one who possesses sound, right? That's usually what we consider Saraswati, jayā. So what does Saraswati mean? This is your test. You'll be given 25-cent shiny coin. So Saras means pooling water. So this is interesting. So remember, Saraswati, before she was a goddess in ancient India, she was a river, right? A river. So the river Saraswati, right? And she was a river that in the ancient world it was called the Saraswati River, right? In text, because it was rivers have different qualities. This one pooled. It had a lot, I guess, marshes or pool. It was, I don't know what exactly, because it's no longer, Saraswati River is no longer available. It's no longer above ground, you could say, due to some people say due to cataclysmic tectonic shift, that the river changed courses, or by change in, it's disappeared. It dried up or went underwater. That's how it went underground. But Saraswati used to be a very popular river. We mentioned when we talked about the Ganga that the ancient Vedic culture seems to have been primarily on the bank of the Saraswati and the Indus River. And then when the Saraswati dried up or disappeared or changed course, it switched to the Ganga Yamuna basins, these fertile basins. And then we get the kind of the more modern, by modern we mean thousands of years, Hinduism on the bank of the Ganga and Yamuna. But ancient times, Saraswati was very, very important. It's mentioned that river is mentioned so many times in the Vedas, right? So she was Saras means pooling water, Vati means she possesses, so it's the name of the river that had pools, water, right? Right. There's another meaning. Actually, you gave me a card for my birthday with Saraswati. On the back of it, and it gave a different. So here, Sara means essence. One of the names of. So you can see this is the nature of. It's very Kabbalistic, where you can take any word and start meaning this letter means this and letter means this and create all new. So we do that a lot, right? Whether or not it really originally meant it means this now. If you can think it means it type of thing, right? So Saras means essence, and Swa. Swati means one's own. So Saraswati is she who possesses or gives knowledge of oneself. Right. So that's also very interesting. And you can see how this could be connected. The ancient rishis, the Vedic rishis at that time on the bank of the Saraswati River, right? The river that's giving them life, the river they consider to be a goddess, the river that's giving them their culture, right? Is also the river on whose banks they meditate and discover themselves, the one who gives. And we use that language now. My mother Ganga, all my knowledge comes on the bank of Mother Ganga. It's Ganga's grace that I have any devotion. You know, we use that type of knowledge, that type of language now, right? But part of this, this saras, pooling water, it's water, it's fluid. The sound is the meaning of the word is fluid. So fluidity, and water is fluid, so it means river, right? But also speech is fluid, and thought is fluid, and music is fluid. Ragas are fluid, rhythms are fluid. So you can see how she becomes associated, the sound of the river and the flow of the river, with this type of idea. So at one point, somewhere along the line, Saraswati went from river to goddess. Of course, the rivers are goddesses in India. Actually, here too, our river's a goddess too. We don't know her name, but she's definitely a goddess, right? And like the Ganga, we've told stories on the Ganga and Yamuna last few months, and how a sage brought down the Ganga, how Bhagarat brought down the river Ganga from the heavenly realm of Brahma down onto the Himalayas in order to purify the earth, eventually to the ocean, eventually to the underworld to purify the bones of his ancestors. We told elaborately that story. The idea that these divine rivers come down, but they're originally goddesses, and so they're goddesses in the upper realms. When they come down, they're goddesses as rivers. So they're also rivers, and then we also mentioned that they're also flows of consciousness and flows of prana in our body. So we mentioned Ida and Pingala are the Ganga and Yamuna, and Saraswati is a Sushumna in that conception, right? But of course, it's very hard. I mean, I don't have enough scholarly knowledge and also this is a time, it's almost prehistory, right? When exactly how she went from river to the goddess we usually think of. Like Ganga has an iconographic form. She holds certain things. She holds a pot. She rides up on a crocodile or like this. But we know she's a river, right? Saraswati is a completely independent goddess, independent of a river. You know, she's now Saraswati. You know, what do we think of Saraswati? She sits on a swan. She dresses in what? These are part of her Dhyan mantra. She dresses in white, right? She holds scripture, right? The Vedas, not just any scripture, Sanskrit, Vedic scripture. She holds a crystal mala, not just any mala, crystal mala. She holds a veena, a classical instrument, right? She's usually with 2 arms or 4 arms. Is usually described like this. But how is that connected to the river? So there's stories. Like everything, there's always stories, and so this is also story time. So a long time ago, when the world was young, as the all stories go, there was a great battle between 2 demons, right? Or Bhargavas and Heyahas. I'm sorry, I'm going to get this right. Hehayas. I have to get these right. Right, and in the process, there was an all-consuming fire was lit as a weapon. Some detail, right? Name Varavagni, right? But this fire that was lit would destroy the world. Like everything left undone. Usually the demons are fighting or gods are fighting, something's unleashed. We can see that, easily we can unleash something that can destroy. We can unleash a fire now that can destroy the world. We have to be very careful, right? If groups are fighting. So in the ancient world, in this mythological realm, it was like that too. So a great fire was lit, and that threatened to destroy the world, right? All the devas, all the gods and goddesses went to Saraswati, to goddess Saraswati, who was believed to be in the heavenly realms, right? As a goddess. Usually we think, she was a river and then became personified as a goddess, right? In this story, she was a goddess who came down as a river, like the Ganga, right? And they asked her, "Will you please protect the universe?" Right? she said she would only agree if her husband, her consort, Brahma, Lord Brahma, would agree, right? Told her to do so. If directed by Brahma, she would do so, right? So they all went to Brahma. This is a typical story. You keep going, you get passed off to higher authorities. They went to Brahma, and Brahma said, yes, you become a river, right? You become a river and you put out that fire. How do we put out this fire? That's going to destroy the world, right? So he says that she left Brahmaloka, the heavenly world, and descended, right? And went to the sage This is an older list of. We have our own list of rishis that we all know. This is an older list of rishis that have. There's gods in the Vedas that we no longer worship, and there's rishis in the Puranas that we no longer remember. This is one of such things. Uttanka's ashram, right there. She went there and met Lord Shiva. That's where Shiva was hanging out. Shiva likes ashrams, right? She went to his ashram, and Shiva got a kalasham, a pot, right, and says, "You go into this pot. I'll put in this pot. I shall catch that fire and hold it in this pot temporarily, right? You come into this pot, right, and so you can swallow the fire." Right, but even just a little river is not strong enough to swallow this fire. So then from here you flow to the ocean, right? And you take the fire with you. And when you get to the ocean, you'll immerse it. You'll drown the fire into the ocean. And so where she flowed, actually, interesting. Now I'm thinking she flowed to Puṣṭir. So Puṣṭir is actually one of the few temples to Lord Brahma, right? So it's interesting. I'm just thinking that there's connection in all. There's like 3 major temples to Brahma in all India. Because it's interesting. He's such an important god, but he's not worshipped. There's reasons for it, but it's another good set of stories. But I won't tell those stories today. They're really good stories, but I won't tell those stories. Although he's worshipped in Bali, he's very popular in Bali, and I think, did you see a Brahma temple in Thailand also? I think there's Brahma temples in Thailand. Yeah, I think so. Because actually, in the part of the Hindu diaspora, Hinduism spread through kings and like that beyond what we normally consider the Hindu land, Hindustan now. It went. So Brahma, where you can think of like the waters of the Srota-svatī, it flooded out, right, and then receded to what we now know as geographical India. But other places where it went, there's still Brahma temples. But in India, interestingly enough, there's no more real Brahma temples. But so from there, she continued her journey to the ocean, and immersed the fire into the ocean. Therefore, the world was saved. Now we can imagine what that possibly could mean. There's a good show on History Channel that will come up with their version of what the story could possibly mean. Right. So we mentioned her normal dhyan sloka, that she's white like the moon, clad in a white dress, bedecked with white ornaments, radiant with beauty, holding a book, a pen, often a pen in her hand, mala. So when we think of her as a Srota-svatī and now Saraswati, as a goddess of learning, all of her symbols is that of absolute purity. It's not just learning, not just words, not just music, not just knowledge. It's classical music. It's a Vedic mantra. It's not just knowledge. It's knowledge of the Vedas, right? She's white. She's very pure. The most sattvic of the sattvic. Her mala is also crystal. It's the most pure. It's the most opposite of not opaque. It's see-through. What's the word? Transparent. It's completely transparent, right? And so, in popular Hinduism, we think, there's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trimurti, and the three Shaktis, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Kālī, or Durga, or Parvati, like that. And so, Brahma, if we consider it a little bit symbolically, a little bit metaphysically, Brahma he's in the Tantric scripture. One of his names is Vāgeshvara, and her name is Vāgeshvari, the Lord of speech and the goddess of speech, right? Or the Lord of vibration and the goddess of vibration. So we think back to like how there's now something before, and how nothing became something, or how the one thing became many things, right? Within the infinite, non-dual, unagitated ground of non-manifested being, there's something. We can have our religion based upon that, in case you want to love that, right? Somehow or another, there's a vibration. Somehow or another, it expressed, right? And in Tantra we call it there's a pulse, a bindu, a spanda, something that caused it to move, the one thing to vibrate. How can one thing vibrate when there's nothing to vibrate again? There's all kinds of philosophical, interesting things that can be said, but that's somehow or another it happened because here we are. We see a world where there's only, we see many where there's only one, or we see something when there is no thing. There's something somehow or another that's happened, right? So that first vibration, right? That first vibration that is Saraswati. That she is that at the initial pulse. So Brahma is usually considered the god of Rajas. He creates activity, right? And then as it vibrates, and then the world's created, then it's sustained, and that's Sattva. That's the realm of Vishnu, and then it's destroyed. Or transformed or come to an end. That's death, birth, life, and death. Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas, right? Shiva is the lord of Tamas. This is how we usually separate it. But their Shaktis are in a reverse order. We talked about this when we talked in the Chandi. They're in a reverse order, right? So Saraswati. So while Brahma is the lord of Rajas, his consort, as a consort of Brahma, is also Rajas. She's the Shakti of Rajas, the one that causes vibration. But she's so close to the transcendental. That Rajas is the most sattvic of the sattvic. Even though it's the beginning of movement, it's so close to the non-dual, to the reality, that it's the most pure, right? So it's movement, Rajaguna, but at its most pure, which is Sattva Guna. Therefore, all her symbolism is that of white and pure. It's the most refined, it's a thing. It's by fault. She's the initial vibration that goes to become grosser and grosser and grosser is everything. But it's also when we go back to her, and we're trying to get back, by worshiping her, you become more and more refined. You can see anybody who worships Saraswati, not just in puja, we're ringing bells and burning incense, but like by training in classical music, or by studying Sanskrit or the scriptures, or by doing japa and meditation, right? These are or learning classical Indian dance, right? That's very hard. Right? None of these things are easy. But why is it hard? Because it's so refined, and we're not very refined, right? You have to train the mind and to purify the mind and focus the mind and train the mind. Right? This sunītiḥ, these type of names. Srota-svatī, Saraswati. Also, Saraswati is also in. I'm getting ahead of myself. In the during Navaratri, there's a reason we worship her. There's different ways of doing this. Okay, this is not the Navaratri, but during Navaratri, there's so many different ways of worshiping the goddess in Navaratri. And of course, we primarily here we worship we do Durga Puja on the last 4 days, right? That's the Bengali form. We also worship the Navadurgas, right? There's another form, a different form of Durga, and they're also conceptualized as representing the chakras and the elements and the planets, and so it's a progressive from gross to subtle. You could see like this, in different stages of the spiritual life, from lower to higher. Another popular way of worship is to worship 3 days Kālī, 3 days Lakshmi, and 3 days Saraswati. Right, and in the Chandi, there's 18 chapters. Are there 18 chapters? Yeah. 18 chapters? 11 chapters. 11 Chandi. 13 chapters. Certain chapters, but there's 3 sections, charitas. There's 3 main stories. There's a story of Madhu Kaitaba. There's the stories of Mahishasura, and the stories of Shumba and Nishumba, and different like that. So these 3 sections, each one has a presiding deity and a presiding bij mantra, right? So in the first one, the presiding deity is Kālī, but the bij mantra is Aim, which is Saraswati. So in by following from Kālī so the Kālī is the tamasic form from Saraswati to Brahma, from Saraswati to Lakshmi to Kālī, but in the which is how we usually go. We usually think this follows but in meditation it's the opposite way around. Right? We're trying to go from Kālī. We worship Kālī first to purify the mind, Lakshmi to refine the mind more and more, to make it sattvic, and then Saraswati to make it so subtle that we can attain. But the order of the mantra shows how the one becomes many through Saraswati, through Lakshmi, to Kālī. So it's interesting how they're also connected. Saraswati is also the name of our lineage, right? You know, there's different in the Dash where our monastic line is called Dashnami. Dashnami means 10 named. So as per tradition, Adi Guru Shankaracharya Bhagavat Pad, the original Shankara of all the Shankaras, he established, as per tradition, he had many disciples, but he had 4 main disciples. He established 4 mutts or seats, ashrams, monasteries, and places of learning in 4 parts of India, and put his main disciples in each of these 4 to be kind of like not really popes. I kept using that word today. There's something like a pope in a certain sense. A pope without the same power. You know, it's a patriarch in a certain sense, although that may change. There's movement to elect the first female Shankaracharya. We were talking. It's been going on for some years. We'll see. But there's some seat holder, you know, representing Shankara, the original Shankaracharya. And one of them is in Sringeri Math, he left his disciple Sureshacharya, right? Sureshacharya is our Acharya. Sureshacharya. And Sureshacharya's, the 3 of the 10 names can be traced back to him. So our own lineage, the Saraswatis, we trace our lineage back to Sureshacharya, therefore to Sringeri Math. So the Saraswati line. And each of the 10 names, there's a verse, and I only recently, after many years of struggle, I forgot the verse. I was told by a great sadhu, and many 24 years ago at Kumbh Mela, Raghavananda Saraswati told me the mantra that defines Saraswati, the qualities of our lineage. And since then, I lost a little piece of paper that I was on, you know, scribbled on a little piece of paper. Everybody knows my filing system. You'd know why I lost my little squiggly piece of paper. And I've never found it again until very recently. I found it again. I found it, not the piece of paper. I found it online, a translation, a PDF of this very rare text that's used by the Shankaracharyas to argue about who gets to be the next Shankaracharya. It's listed in there, right? It's like one of those. It's an ancient book for the ecclesiastical organization of the Shankara mutts. But in it, it mentions each of the Dashnamis has a different quality that's attributed to the name. Of course, we use the same name that our guru had. That's ours. My guru, Omananda Saraswati, his guru Vishnudevananda Saraswati, his guru Hriyananda Saraswati, his guru Yogananda Saraswati. It goes like this, right? So we can trace like that. But and of course, there's no guarantee you're going to be exactly like your guru, but there's some tendency. And so it says, if I don't remember the verse, I remember the point of the verse. The Saraswatis are sagara ag sagara. They're although in the ocean of samsara, in the ocean they're asagara. They're not in the ocean of samsara. That's one of the qualities that they live in. Although they're in the world, they shouldn't be any attached to the world. That's one point we're supposed to try to live up to. And the other one they're supposed to be scholars. Right, Saraswati is the goddess of learning, and so Saraswatis, generally speaking, tend to be speakers, singers, Vedic scholars, Vedantists, you know, things like there tend to be. There's other lineages that tend, like for instance, in the Juna Kata, in the Akatas, the Juna Kata is very famous. We're also part of the Juna Kata. The Juna Kata is the Nagababa line, right? And there's 52 lineages in the Juna Kata. And like there's like, I forgot, now making up numbers, but something like there's 22 that are Puris and 18 that are Giris and like that. But for Saraswati, there's 2, right? There's very few Saraswatis in the Junakata, right? That's very new. People, whenever I mention somebody, oh yes, we're from Junakata, and they're like, Saraswati, Junakata? I've never met anybody. Like that's not a common thing, because Junakata tends to be there's another classification that's getting way off interesting, but get off topic. There's Shastradharis and Astradharis. Shastradharis, those who hold scripture, and Astradharis, those who hold weapons. And you see some of the Babas, you'll see holding trishuls and swords and sticks and clubs and axes. These are, and they're militant Babas. They came up at a time when there was a reason to have militant Babas in India, right? Saraswatis generally aren't Astradharis, they're Shastradharis, they're holders, because of the name Saraswati connects like that. And therefore the Karas tend to be Astradharis, and therefore we don't have many of them. But anyways, we're supposed to have some qualities of Saraswati. We're working on it. So the next name, these are all connected names, right, is Matangi. So we had Nīla-Sarasvatī, Srota-svatī, Saraswati, and now Matangi. And I mentioned that Nīla-Sarasvatī is also considered a name for Mātangī. And Matangi is very interesting. She's very, what do we say about Matangi? Matangi, the name Matangi has many meanings, but the simple name of the word, she's here too. Where is she here? She's second to the end. In the Dash Mahavidyas, she's Kālī, tārā, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Chinnamas, Mamati, Bakala, Matangi. That's her. And this is a very classical form, very refined form, Matangi, according to one second to the last, right? There's other form that her Dhyan mantra, she has different Dhyan mantras describing her form. This is one of them, right? That's not the one you usually see, the one we chose. I forget when we were collecting these pictures for this collection, why we chose that, but I don't remember. I think it was very high quality and nice. So Matangi is a form of the Divine Mother, one of the Dash Mahavidya, one of the 10 forms. Matangi, one of the meanings of Matangi is the daughter of Matanga. So Matanga is a rishi, and Matangi was born as his daughter, right? That's a simple meaning. There's a lot of depth to Matangi, and we were mentioning earlier that amongst our community, Adi Keshav Das, he really has done so much research on Matangi. Be nice maybe one day we can interview him or something like that on Matangi, because he has a reservoir of information and collecting Dhyan mantras, rare mantras and stotrams on Matangi. Very interesting. But she's the daughter of Matanga. And so Matangi, so that's nice. Okay, she's a daughter. She was born as the daughter of some rishi as per some story. But who's Matanga? Matanga there's different types of rishis. We call them Brahma rishis. Brahma rishis are rishis born in Brahmin families. There's Deva rishis, rishi that's like who's born amongst the gods, like Narada. Narada is Deva Rishi Narada. His father is Brahma. He's born amongst the gods, right? He's a divine sage. Then there's Raja rishis, sages born amongst kings. Who's an example of Vishwamitra, a Raja rishi? I think Vishwamitra may be a Raja rishi. Maybe. Anyways, or Janaka is an example of a Janaka is a popular one, but in ancient times there's like that. And so Matanga is born he's not in a low caste, he's an outcast, right? He's an outcast rishi, right? Which is very interesting. So he was born with society disqualifications. Right, and maybe I forget. Maybe it's even here. I mean, his father may have been a hunter or something dealing with impure things. Like I think his father was a hunter. I think that's how. Maybe I have it listed. As I go through, maybe I will jump out. Oh yeah, this is what his father was. But by his tapasya, by his sadhana, he became a rishi, and he was awarded the position of a rishi. Right. Of course, it shows in ancient times there's examples of people who are outside normal rules and of society that become great saints. Right. And anyway, this shows he'll have important things. I'm going to tell a very quick, interesting story I learned from Haley. This is from the Buddhist scripture. There was Buddha's main disciple is called, what was his name? I remember. Ananda. Yeah, Ananda. So Ananda in the story, right? And there was a girl named Pakriti, right? This is also interesting. These are all very symbolic. Pakriti means nature, the name for the Divine Mother, material nature, Shakti, that. But so Pakriti, who fell in love with Ananda. But Ananda is a bhikkhu. He's a monk, right? So there's a problem, right? And he goes, no, I don't even know who you are. Leave me alone. There's some interaction like that, and she gives her things. Oh, actually, I'm the daughter of Matanga, right? And a Chandalabite caste. So now we have this another word, Chandala. So this is a type of Chandala means, now it's not hunter here. Chandala means now Chandala means like outcast or something like that. But a Chandala means in the Vedic terms, I mean the somebody who takes care of dead bodies. They're dealing with I guess modern like domes or things like that. They're dealing with the mortuary tradition, taking care of dead bodies, burning bodies, burying bodies like that, dealing with the bones of bodies like that. And that's considered, death and dead bodies are considered impurifying in traditional Orthodox Vedic culture. Therefore, they're automatically considered unclean and untouchable. And that's, although we all need them, right? When we die, they're the ones who burn our bodies and take care of our, we have people who like morticians that will make a body prepared for viewing, and it's interesting. It's a very weird science where they make a dead body look living again, so that for viewing and for burial and things like that, And when we've had to deal with such people, you meet these people and they're like, going, it's a heavy life. It's a very heavy tradition, and a very important service, right? But it's heavy. So it was even heavier back then, So she says, I am a Chandala by caste. No, and I'm remembering. So their interaction was, it's coming to me. Ananda was thirsty. He saw this girl named Prakriti, give me water. That's the now I'm remembering properly, right? He says, how can I give you water? I'm a Chandala. I can't give you water. That's usually, actually, this is one of the signs that he's like, who you take water from, right? This is like, and so Ananda, the thing is, Ananda is a Buddhist. And the Buddhists can't be made impure, right? This is one of the reasons Buddhism could spread very easily, right? Because you don't become impure by meeting, touching a dead body, by seeing somebody that's died or reborn, by meeting a stranger or a strange land or crossing a river, right? These things don't make you automatically impure, right? It says, I didn't ask you what caste you were. I asked you for water. I didn't ask you if you were a Chanda, who your parents were. It's like at that time a Hindu would ask, before you give me water, who's your father? What was his name? Where did he go to school? You have credentials from the Acharya. Like it could be like that. But the Buddhists would not do like that. So he said, I didn't ask you, just give me water, right? He had been traveling a long way, and was the brink of collapsing when he saw the well and the beautiful maiden outside fetching water. Replied, I asked not what your caste is, I beg you for water. So Pakriti was so moved, this Matanga's daughter was so moved by the holy monk, she began to feel attracted to him. So Sri Ramakrishna said, sadhu, what's the word? Shabdan. Sadhu, beware. Sadhu, be careful. That Thakur would say to his disciples. Right, you have to be careful, because he's like, oh, what's such a loving monk, right? I've never seen such a monk so loving. So you fall in love with the monk. That's a very dangerous thing for everyone involved. So he drinks the water, and that she pours into his cup's hand. When he leaves Pakriti is desperately in love with him, and unable to, I'll just read, because this is written by our friend Haley. He did a painting on this, so I'll just read this. He did the writing on this. Unable to trace him anymore, she approached her mother, Maha-Vidyadhari, to use her black magic and cast a spell on Ananda. Now we know her mother is Maha-Vidyadhari. So this is interesting. Maha-Vidya means the great knowledge, the wielder of the great knowledge, means like a magician. But you see her connection to the Dash Mahavidyas, right? There's, even in Buddhism, there's a connection to the Dash Mahavidya. She's Maha-Vidyadhari, right? Right, a spell so dark and mysterious that it could only be broken by the intervention of the Buddha himself, right? Mahavidyadhari created a spell to catch Ananda, to marry his Chandala daughter and break his monastic vow, and only Buddha. So this is a very ancient story. It's there in the stories, right? And so this story is retold. This story is made famous by Rabindranath Tagore. He retold it in one of his plays, or like this, right? Actually, the name is called Chandalika is the name of the play of Romanesco. He tells a story. You can see it's a very powerful, it's a very dramatic story, right? But this Buddhist tale is very, very old, right? Haley says this is no. Haley says this is the oldest mention of Matanga. That's what Haley is mentioning, right? But the legend seems to be prehistoric, and if you've been to analyze it, it was Haley did. I'm relying a little bit on Haley's analysis, and he's a scholar, research scholar in these things, and he's also painted the most beautiful Matangi deity for me, painting for me. Remember the Dash Mahavijayas that was here? One of them is beautiful Matangi. Right. So he says Chandalas were a caste of antiquity. Now we say, Chandala is somebody, but they were originally a tribe, or like not really a tribe. It's often in some texts, online you'll see, it refers them to a tribe, but actually it was an ancient caste, right? Who cremated bodies, right? And so now we could probably domes, and Benares you have the domes, right? And actually the domes are interesting because they're Brahmins, but they're untouchable Brahmins. Because they're dealing mantras, but they cannot, because of their dealing with dead bodies. They're an interesting type of thing. But anyways, and they resided in cremation grounds. So you see Kālī. She's a daughter of a Chandala. She says, right? And so that means she grew up in a cremation ground. It's like Kālī talking about herself, right? And they wore ornaments of bones, right? And dressed in animal skins, and they were notorious for not following the Vedic ways. This is so it's interesting. We just saw the Dark Crystal remake. Have anybody seen that on Netflix? Is it on Netflix or on Netflix? Remember the Dark Crystal? Anybody remember that from growing up? It was an awesome. So they remade it. They're remaking it as a series, right? And we saw the first series, 10 episodes. It's really. He didn't like it because it's puppets, but. I liked it because it was puppets. I grew up with that movie, so it was very significant to me. But there's one tribe in there that dealt with death, and they wore bones, and I was thinking a little bit like that. There's people who are there's groups that are oriented towards in a different way. They're interested in the realm of the dead, right? So it seems to be like this, right? But Haley writes, but they weren't complete tribals. They lived in close proximity to civilized humans, often in the fringes of towns and villages, and their existence continued right up to modern times. Chandali perhaps originated, and then it says, Chandalini, the name of Matangi, perhaps originated as a cult goddess of the Chandalas, right? Their form of Ma, their form of Kālī, right? And was later adapted into the Buddhist stories and subsequently identified as one of the main Mahavijayas of Shakti, right? The 10 Mahavijayas, manifestations of Shakti. It is perhaps no coincidence that in the Buddhist lore, the mother of Prakriti is called Mahavijayadharini, or Dhari, right? So it's interesting. So now you have. I said that she's a form of Saraswati. In the connection to the Dash Mahavijayas, she's Saraswati, right? But Saraswati is Vedic and pure. The first vibe, the purest, perfectly pronounced Vedic mantra, right? The Omkara itself that's separated into the Gayatri and separated into the Vedas, right? And then has come down to she's Vidyadharini. She's the one who gives all the sciences. Science here means the science of music, the science of cooking, the science of the 64 arts, and all these different the vidyas, probably better than the older meaning of the word science, not the way we usually use it now in the modern context, right? But so she's the Vedas at their purest. She's culture at its purest. She's Vedic tradition at its purest, right? And now there's another form of Saraswati, Nīla-Sarasvatī, dark Saraswati, not white Saraswati, right? Also named Matangi, who's a daughter not of Brahma, the one who vibrated, who first heard the Vedas, but of Matanga, a Chandala, who deals with dead bodies, right? So that's a very interesting thing. So what could this possibly mean? Of course, Ma is everything, but if Saraswati is pure sound, pure knowledge, pure music, pure scripture, perfect diction, perfect pronunciation, right? Classical music like that. Mātaṁgī would be, in a certain sense, everything else. Because sound, when it starts, it starts pure. Like Ganga in Gangotri is perfectly pure. There's nothing mixed into it. If you ever go to Gangotri, go above Gangotri to Gomukh or something. I got as close as we could before we hit the snow. And we took the cold, but it's 10 minutes earlier, it was ice. It's coming out of the glacier, right? It's completely pure, right? Very cold and very pure, right? And it makes its way down to Hadwar. It's cold and mostly pure, right? You get down to Allahabad and Benares. We believe it's pure, you know. It's purer than me. I still feel clean when I come out of it, right? Ganga's always purer than me, right? No matter where I am, it always feels. But you go to Calcutta, it gets harder. It's pure Ganga. It's still Ganga, right? But it's not the same, right? So Saraswati, you could think of Ganga at Gomukh, and Matangi is Ganga through Calcutta, the Hooghly or something like that, right? It's a way of thinking of like that. So knowledge, sound, vibration, it goes through all, and you know, no one person, nothing's completely pure all the time. It's multifaceted. So if I've told the story talking about Mātangī, probably even recently, of that there's a R&B singer, historical great singer, I think Cecil White, something, right, yeah. And she was years on the Colbert Report show a long time ago, and they were interviewing. She sang an incredible song, and they interviewed her because she started in the gospel church. She was a church singer, right? And then she switched she went from singing in church to becoming known as a gospel singer, and then she made the switch to an R&B singer, which is secular music. And she said, he asked her what would happen. It's like, my minister, my friends, my family, and my fans said, you're singing the devil's music now. Before you were singing about God and for God, but this is devil's music. And I remember she was 70-year-old when I said in the interview, she said, honey, the devil ain't got no music. That was her answer, right? It's like, in other words, all music is divine, right? It may not be as pure, right? It's not the same as gospel music. It's not the same as a classical Veena performance by a trained saint or something like that, But it's not. But it's still divine. Even if it's impure, it's still divine, right? So music has a full array, right? It may not have the same effect on consciousness. You listen to classical music. You listen to another type of music. I'm not going to pick on anybody here. We all have a type of music that other people consider demonic, probably. Like we maybe even on our iPad or something. But the point is, it's all divine. Music is divine, right? It may not be as refined, but it's divine. It may not be liberating, but it's still divine, right? So Mātangī Saraswati is at its sound at its purest, knowledge at its purest, words at their purest, right? And Mātangī could be perhaps sound, a way of interpreting it, sound at its less refined, more further along, you could say, right? And also, so Mātangī, her name is Chandali, right? So there's another, she's a Chandala. Another name for her, Uchista Chandali. That's another, I'm giving the secrets of her esoteric mantra. Uchista Chandali, Sri Mātangeshwari Sarva Jannava Shankari, right? Uchista Chandali. Uchista, what does Uchista mean? Leftover, very good. Leftover. So Uchista means, so if you eat something, and whatever is left, like if you touch something to your mouth and put it in, like half-eaten something, is uchista, right? Jute, it's unclean, right? And of course, different cultures consider it differently, but in Orthodox Vedic culture, that is considered you wouldn't offer anything that you've tasted, for instance. Even we don't even, of course, we don't taste and put things on, but we don't even taste separately when we bring from Maya. Even that's considered uchista, even if it's not touched anybody's mouth. But we have, we don't smell flowers before offering. Even that's considered somehow subtly uchista. What to speak of actually touching your mouth or something like that. But so she's uchista chandali. So uchista actually means left, like you said, leftover. So it's a left. So it's interesting. So there's a story, another story of how she came. Let's see what time it is. I'm okay. This is my uchista coffee. So one time, Vishnu and Lakshmi went to go have dinner at Parvati's house. Shiva and Parvati's house in Kailash. They were invited for dinner, right? And in the process, some as they were eating, some of their food fell to the ground, right? And then some girl says, "I'll take that as prasad." Can I take that as prasad? Yes, you can take that prasad. So it says that the girl who took it as prasad is considered a Parvati's own form, and being humble for the guest is God, and therefore you take in the prasad of a saint or a god. We take his prasad, right? But they said that one who took that as what in the story that was Matangi. She's Parvati as Matangi's form, right? Taking the prasad. So it's interesting that like we call it prasadam because it's taken from a divine like that. But uchista chandali, it's the leftovers of not of Parvati or of Lakshmi or of Vishnu, but of somebody dealing with dead bodies. So it's like impure leftovers of an impure person and an impure culture and it's like it's meant to be heavy. It's meant to be so, but of course, prasad, we consider prasad not uchista, we consider it holy. But what about food that's touched somebody else's mouth? Of course, we consider it it's vibrationally maybe unclean. It's also maybe hygienically not pure in that sense, due to germs and things like that, and different thing. But it's food. It's like what's changed? Not much has changed. From pure food to leftover food. It's still food, but something has changed. It's like pure music and come down, or water. It's come down. It's very often when we bring Saraswati and Matangi together, it's showing the full spectrum of everything, from clean to unclean, from pure to impure, from subtle to gross. That's a better way of saying that, rather than giving a judgment, right? And also, isn't this part of life? It's that we're not always clean, right? Sometimes we bathe and we're clean, and then we get dirty, right? So sometimes we're Saraswati, sometimes we're Matangi. And in the tradition also, she's connected to the menstrual cycles also. The Divine Mother herself is Saraswati at one point, and then she's Matangi at another point. We consider impure, the period of impurity. It's the Divine Mother though, right? So it's still, it's the same Kālī, it's the same Divine Mother. So that full spectrum, woman in her full spectrum, life in its full spectrum, music and sound and knowledge and words and behavior, everything in its full spectrum, impure. I type my to find my. So I'm not going to give, because Bij mantra shouldn't be given openly like this. But part of her common mantra, Om Namo, just say Namo Bhagavati. Oh, that supreme. This is actually her main mantra for worship. Oh Bhagavati. So she's Bhagavati. She's the supreme goddess. She's the source. She's the Mahadevi. Uchista Chandali. Right. So that could be you are the daughter of. Uchista Chandali, the residue and outcast. That's how I'd probably translate it. So this is heavy. The divine. Oh goddess. We say oh goddess. Oh Ma, the source of all power, the mother of all creation. We give all these we give thousands of thousand-name hymns describing her glories, right? But now it's like, the impure leftovers of an outcast. That's an unusual way to pray, right? Uchista Chandali, Sri Matangeshwari. So Matangeshwari is the daughter of Matanga Rishi, or of an outcast, right? Supreme Goddess Matangi, daughter of Matanga Rishi, the resident, the outcast. Then Sarva Jana Vashankari, who grants so this is interesting. Who grants control over all beings. So she's a tantric goddess, and so in the obvious meaning of the mantra, the external meaning of the mantra, oh goddess, we worship you in a tantric way, so that who grants people control. So if you want to, so you can see there's a little bit of magic. She's connected to magical practices, right? So she who grants the siddhi of controlling others. This type of magical can be understood this way. Now, course, most of us here, I don't know what you guys are doing in your private life when it gets dark. Cremation grounds after dark at midnight on Halloween or whatever, it's like whether you're doing rites to impure goddesses in order to get control of your enemies and things like that. Hopefully not. If you are, now you know the mantra, right? But yogis meditate on. She's included in the Dash Mahavijjas for another reason. Yogis meditate upon her, right? So another thing. Okay, Uchista leftover. Sri Ramakrishna said, let's bring Sri Ramakrishna. It's always good to bring Sri Ramakrishna into it. Ramakrishna. The only thing that's never been made uchista is God. Right? We mentioned this the other day that he's never been, she's never been, it's never been described, but it's never touched the lips. Right? Anything that touched the lips automatically is going to be impure. Because it's not going to be, a word is going to be, from a thought to word, it's already a big step down. Right? From the ultimate reality to thought's a big step down, and from thought to words, another step down. And then by the time I speak it, it's going to be totally misunderstood for sure. Right? One of our friends, just recently, I listened to a class, he made a point like this. If you ask me, how you are, if I ask you how you are, and you say, oh, I'm okay. Or I'm not doing that good. It's like so much, and all you can eventually, from how you really are to what you really mean, to what you want to say, to what you actually say, and to what I actually understand. It's almost nothing, right? So if I ask you how you are, you say I'm fine, or I'm not doing that good. I understand almost nothing. It's so far from its original thing, right? So everything is uchista. Anything thought is uchista. Anything vocal, anything spoken or thought or communicated is automatically going to be impure. It's going to be a step down from its pristine, the original state of it, right? And so something that touched the mouth, uchista. So any word, any thought, any emotion, expressed emotion is already uchista. It's already left in its pure state. So another meaning of the same mantra, right? Om Namo Bhagavati Uchista Chandali Sri Matangeshwari Sarva Janava Shankari, right? We worship the supreme goddess Matangi, and Matangi, also another word, Matangi could also be interpreted. This Matangarishi has been interpreted as from our thoughts and words, right? Who are born from our thoughts and words, and then when we, rather than Sarva Janava Shankari, may we behold you, which is the Chandali, in everything that's, even in things that are impure. So this is the big thing. We try to, of course, it's not that easy, but we can try to see Ma in all that's pure and divine and beautiful, truth, beauty, and goodness, Sundaram, Satyam, Shivam, all those type of things. But to see Ma in things that are impure, right? Things that are manifested, impure and unrefined, which is the Chandali, right? And then Sarva Janava Shankari, rather than saying grant us control over others, which doesn't seem to be the way we should be teaching here at Kālī Mandir, right? But actually, it's meant to understand, to get understanding and mastery of our own thoughts. This is how yogis understand this mantra, right? Because our own thoughts, they may not be that pure. Most of us, I don't know about you, please forgive me if I'm superimposing my experiences on you, but you should all be ashamed of yourself. Anyways. Grant us a deeper mastery and understanding of all aspects of ourselves, the full, all aspects. We're not just one thing, we're many things, right? And she's many things. She's everything. She's become, and she's the one has become everything. So everything means everything, not just the good stuff, not only the pure stuff, not only the refined, not only the things that shine with divinity. Right? Even the things that don't shine with divinity, it's divinity not shining with divinity. It's still it only and her only. So just a few dhyan, some of her forms are interesting. I think we'll end with some of her dhyan mantras, I think. Nabrihat Tantrasara, Uchista Matangini. So this is interesting. This one, she sits on a throne, right? In the Brihat Tantrasara, she sits on a corpse. Of course, we know this. Kālī sits on a corpse. You can see it connected to. You can see where this is coming from. She wears red garments, red jewelry, and a garland of Gunja seeds. You know Gunja? Gunja, actually, nobody here. In my room, my Krishna wears Gunja mala. Gunja mala is these black and red seeds, right? And they're very, very common. It says that Radha used to make them for Krishna's hair, right? But interesting, recently we ordered, Adikesha got us a pack of Gunja seeds, right? Because these are very auspicious. And he got them because they're auspicious for Matangi, not because of Krishna. But very often a lot of Krishnas and shalograms will have Gunja mala, right? But they're also really poisonous, right? And really hallucinogenic, right? So in order to make the mala, some people will pierce it and poke their finger and die. I mean, it's really, so I realized, I don't know which, I have a bag of them, I don't know what to, I'm scared to do anything with them, I don't know what to, we show them to Matangi there's a day for Matangi, Akshaya Tritiya is Matanga Jayanti, kind of mala there, I don't want to open it, I'm scared to, because they're actually quite dangerous, right? But her Dhyan mantra describe her holding this, I think, dangerous, hallucinogenic, poisonous type of thing associated with her. Right. The goddess is described as a young 16-year-old maiden with fully developed breasts. She carries a skull and a sword in her two hands and is offered leftovers. That's another important point. Right. So we can offer her our leftovers. This is an interesting point. And she, of course, we would never do that to other deities. Right. And also, to do her puja, this is another thing. Usually what we do, even before speaking about holy things, I take a shower and put on clean clothes and bhashma, and then we go, okay, we're in a pure state the best we can. What to speak of doing puja and things like that. Or chanting, we wash your mouth before chanting mantras, but not for Matangi. You worship her without showering, without washing your mouth. You eat and don't wash your mouth and then chant her mantra, right? Because she likes uchista chandali. Also, another word chandali, there's a play on that. Chandali means, is a play, chandali means is a chandala, we mentioned this outcast tribe, but chanda also means meter, right, by extension. So uchista chandala means impure meters. It means you're not chanting your mantra properly. Your meter is wrong, your intonation is wrong, your diction is wrong, the rhythm of the mantra is wrong. So therefore and one of the reasons we wash our mouth before chanting is because in order to pronounce properly, right? You had clear dictions, but she likes to be worshipped with an impure mouth, right? Wearing dirty clothes, right? I'm not suggesting that you all go home and do this tonight, but there may be a time to do it during Navaratri, during Akshaya Tritiya is one of her important days. There's important days that you can kind of but also just thinking about that. This is one of Ma's forms, and what's this form? All of Ma's forms. Right, we have the pure Godhead, the supreme Brahman that shines, that is pure consciousness like that. And everything else is not that, but only that. It's that step down as everything else, right? And so when you worship Ma as Matangi, as Nīla-Sarasvatī, you're worshiping everything else. Not just, it's God and everything else that's also God. India, Puruṣ-charya Nava Tantra, and the Tantra Sada describes Matangi as blue, connecting her to Nīla-Sarasvatī, we mentioned. A crescent moon adorns her forehead. She has 3 eyes, a smiling face. She wears jewelry and is seated on a jeweled throne. That's more like what we have here. In her forearm, she carries a noose, a sword, a gourd, and a club. That's what we have here. Her waist is slim and her breasts are well developed. So there's another form called Raja Matangi. This is another very famous form. And she's green. This is you'll see sometime. And there she's sometimes known as Shamala. She has long hair, a smiling expression, intoxicated eyes. She wears a garland of kandamba flowers and various ornaments. She perspires a little across her face, which renders her even more beautiful. So it describes how beautiful like this. And there she said she plays a veena, wears a conch shell earrings, and flower garlands, and has flower paintings adorning her forehead. So the most common she's not a popular Hinduism goddess, but in popular tantric images, her most common thing you'll see her is with a parrot. She's connected to parrot, and of course that connects her to what's the Devi where the parrot is? It Meenakshi or Meenakshi. So she's connected. Actually, Meenakshi is considered one of her in the Brahminical tradition. She's worshipped, but she's considered Matangi, right? And holding that parrot. When we had this painting, which is no longer here, it's in my couture right now, that Haile Goswami did of the Dash Mahavidyas. He did each painting as per Tantra. Tantrasara is an ancient collection of dhyan mantras on tantric deities, right? So he wanted to match as best possible Tantrasara. But in the Tantrasara, it describes these certain weapons, and there's no vina, and there's no parrot, right? So, but if with no vina, no parrot, you won't, like here, no vina, no parrot, you wouldn't. If I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know she was Matangi. She's according to the mantra, but she's not the popular form. So what he did, he had her holding all the proper things, and then over and above that, there was a vina and a parrot on her throne. Like so, we have to show. But that's a very common thing. You see the vina and the parrot. Matangi plays a ruby-studded veena and speaks sweetly. Forearmed with dark emerald complexion, anointed with red kumkum powder, crescent moon on her forehead. She carries a noose, goad, sugarcane bow, and arrow. So there's all these different forms that are there. Bow on the neck to the So Saraswati and Nīla-Sarasvatī, or black, blue, green, dark. Nīla, I think that's a better thing. Light Saraswati and dark Saraswati. And so Matangi is in that group of names. So this, and of course, this is not a text on the Kālī Sahasranāma isn't a text about Matangi, it's a text about Kālī. So each one of these is either saying a well-known or little-known goddess is really a form of the Mahadevi Kālī, or it's describing her gunas and attributes and qualities, right? But here it's like each one of these names that we usually think of attributed to some other goddess, these are actually Kālī's. This is describing Kālī. So by saying Kālī is Matangi, it's saying Kālī is everything that's impure, right, or expressed, right, and the human being at all clean and unclean. So we say during puja, apavitra pavitrava, clean or unclean, remember you will become clean. But clean or unclean, we don't have to remember clean or unclean, we're clean. That's the point, right? You know, like we think, oh, pure and impure, by remembering you, we become pure, right? That's the mantra we use like that, and that's part of because this is our ritual and this is our sadhana. We're in puja, we're trying to become pure, and in sadhana, we're purifying our consciousness. That's what we're doing. We start from the external and internal. But the fact is, everything's pure. That's still a fact, right? So there is a potential. I have to be real careful how I say it, because we don't say, oh, don't think everything's pure, because everything is pure. Right? Everything is ma, everything. But if you start thinking, oh, everything's ma, everything's pure, and if I don't have to purify anything, then you don't make any progress, and you don't refine the mind, right? You don't learn anything. You don't refine your intelligence. You don't refine your education, your abilities, and everything like that. So we still, our goal is to purify ourselves. But what's the result of that purity, right? Somebody who has reached that state of complete purity, complete enlightenment, complete refined subtlety of consciousness, right? It seems, at least if we could start comparing the writings of the saints that we consider to be those type of people, right? And what do they say? After their years of tapasya, the years of austerities and renunciation, meditation and sadhana, and like this, and devotion and japa and pilgrimages and charity, all the things that make up somebody's spiritual life, what's their conclusion? This is all ma. Nothing. I only see God. There's a wonderful video we have in one of these sadhu videos that's out there, and they interview this one, I think Yogananda Yeti, I think is his name, or something like that, and he says, they say it's Kali Yuga, but I don't see Kali Yuga anyway. I see everything is full of bliss. You know, it's like, is everybody else, I mean, it's like, is this Kali Yuga? I don't see Kali Yuga. You know, but in the beginning you have to think, oh, this is Kali Yuga. Be careful. Right? You can't just say, oh, everything's Kali. It's not, everything is divine, everything is pure, I don't have to do it, therefore, and your spiritual life stops. The result of successful, it seems, the result of the saints, the result of their realization, the result of their austerity is to see everything as divine, right? And so one of our friends, another named Shankaracharya, he's not one of the Shankaracharyas, but he's a tantric yogi named Shankaracharya that we met many years ago. He says that it's good that if our philosophy, even if we haven't realized what the philosophy says, is actually true. Like we can start, oh, the world's sinful, the world's evil, the world's false, or any version of that we have in the various schools in religion and philosophical systems, right? And that may be helpful because it may help us renounce, go from gross to subtle, impure to impure, and external to internal, and from observed to observer, and all those type of things as a spiritual discipline, right? So first you think the world is unreal and only God is real, then you realize the God has become everything, right? That's the fruit of realization, right? But it's still true that God has become everything. God's already everything, right? So our friend Shankaracharya said that actually it's good if the philosophy that everything actually is God. That's the truth. It's not our experience yet. We see impure. We see good and bad. We see the full variety, and we're trying to navigate our way so we can have a deeper, holistic realization, peak realization, right? But it's good to remember it's actually true that God has become everything and everything is pure, right? That's the realization of the saints that we are trying to follow and have them guide our sadhanas. That's their realization. So that's the truth that they realize. That's the truth that we're trying to realize. So Goddess Matangi, Nīla-Sarasvatī, these forms I think help. For me, Matangi has revolutionized my understanding of the whole thing. How the one becomes everything and is everything, even though everything not necessarily at its purest. It's pure, but we still have to not get caught in the delusion. Oh, everything's pure. I have to do anything. That I think is a delusional stance, but it is still true. So we'll leave it there because it's probably. Oh, I'm actually 3 minutes early. I did really, really good. Yes. These are the people who deal with dead bodies. They're the take care of the And at the Mandir, those gods, those people, they're like that. So, but it's interesting because they're necessary, And also, Ma likes cremation grounds. So, and also you see it. The very first name of Kālī Sahasranāma, Smashana, not Shri Mata, right? It's Smashana. Smashana is the first word, right? So, and of course, this is very deep about that which survived. Oh, it's another this is a good point. I have to do the final point. Are we still on? This is a good point. Okay, this is a very, very important point. I'll take my 2. I'm going to claim my 2 minutes, Your Honor. Watching this on TV, I know how this works. I'm claiming my 2 minutes. Matangi means residue, right? So, let me find here. What's the residue after everything's she's connected to cremation, right? When you cremate the body, what's left? You can say ash, that's okay. But actually what's left is that which doesn't burn. Right? What burns is like what's left after everything is pure consciousness. Right? So it's interesting, almost you get to a that's like this is like the deeper it's like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to talk about deep mystical things, not this. That's the deep mystical thing. After everything's finished, after everything, what's left? Right? None of this will survive. None of this won't survive. Even your person, hopefully we believe as Hindus that we'll survive death. Right? Who will survive death? Bhajanananda survived death. The person is like whatever I was before. I mean, the personality, the mind, the memories, nothing. Maybe sometime, but like what really survives? What's the actual residue after everything? Right, that's her. That's Matangi. So it goes from all kinds of cool tantric things and pro world things like to the absolute, from 0 to 108 instantly to supreme, unchanging Brahman. Right, she's everything, and after everything, only she's the residue of the whole thing. So, anyways, we'll leave there. There's so much more, and actually, I think it's really good when Adi comes. Maybe we can do an interview with him or a podcast with him, because he's done so much research on her, and she's super interesting. And I've only, I'm just talking around the issues, she's so profound and deep. Hari Om Tat Sat. So no more questions. Okay, Hari Om. So we have to start. Thank you for your kind attention. Jai Ma Kālī.